Communion unites spiritual and physical. You cannot gain salvation through eating a crumb of bread and drinking some juice. It's not possible. You gain salvation through accepting Jesus. But people cannot see physically that action taking place. It's a spiritual action that takes place inside of you. And so there is a physical counterpart with communion, so that what is consistent in you spiritually every single day is now overlapping what we are showing to the world physically. So that's why Jesus said, as often as you do this. So this is something to be engaged in often. Because when people are seeing that we are often having a meal that is representative of our salvation, they are going to begin to try and see what all that is about. And that's where they get to interact with what Jesus says is his true body. Because if we say we live by his body, then his body will be working in us. And then if we are being sustained and cleansed and revitalized by his blood, that they are also going to see that same process work out in the way that we are transforming one day to the next to be more like Jesus. So the world cannot see what's happening in you spiritually, but they can see what's happening in you physically. And as we are consistently gathering together saying we need to have communion, this is something that has been really a problem in the Western church, is that we do not make communion the same kind of priority that it was intended to be. It's intended to be a visual aid to the world. In fact, to back this up, in Roman times, where they were trying to stamp out Christianity because they were so fearful of what it was doing, they began to send propaganda throughout the regions exploiting that Christians in their love feast would have sacrificial eatings together in which they would eat a person's body and drink their blood. And they spread this throughout the Roman Empire to make people afraid, because the Christians were inviting others to come join them in what was called love feast at that time, very similar to our worship service. But the Romans were like, man, this is going like wildfire. We got to scare the people. And they say, don't go, because they're eating people and they're drinking people. Who knows? You might be the sacrifice, right? Like, this is actual propaganda. We have some of this. It's crazy. And so they were trying to spread that, and the Christians are laughing because they're like, no, the person that we're partaking of is Jesus. We don't want your life. We want his. We don't want your blood. We want his. And I know that sounds kind of weird, right? But when you understand that that's a physical representation of a spiritual reality, people would start saying, how do these Christians keep growing? How do they become more like Jesus? And all they can see on the outside is they keep going to that love feast. They keep gathering together and having communion. Look, it's changing them. Like, to the unspiritual eye, when every time the church would gather and have this meal and these people would start changing more and more from week to week, they'd be like, what are they eating? Daniel was kind of like this. You remember when Daniel was taken into captivity? I wasn't there. Maybe some, never mind. When he was taken into captivity, there was a distinction between them and some other regions that had been conquered that had brought in young men similar to those of Israel. And they were eating food that was offered to the Babylonian gods. And Daniel, by conscience, was like, no, I can't do that. And he said, I'd rather eat vegetables than eat this filth that has been offered in worship to that which is no God at all. And so he goes and he appeals to his manager, and he's like, listen, I can't do this. Like, just give me vegetables, give me water, right? And the manager's like, look, if you are not healthy, it's not your head, it's mine. And he's like, trust me, I will be healthy if I don't partake of this absolute filth that is given in worship to what's no God at all. Give me the meager sustenance of just veggies and water, and you will see that there's health. And so the guy just listened to Daniel, and what happens between Daniel and his buddies is they are shown to be more healthy. I want you to understand, it's not because nobody was eating their vegetables in Babylon. That's not why they were looking healthy. The reason they were looking healthy is because God was doing something in them by faith. But listen, Babylon couldn't see that. They don't understand faith. All they could see is the physical change. And so God showed that through faith, a physical change took the children of Israel to look better than these other ones that were eating the filth of idolatrous worship. That's why communion is important. We are gathering together and saying, our meal is Christ. And what should be happening as other people see that what we eat, what we live on is the meal of Christ, they should see the transformation and physically say, man, what is in that bread you eat? And what is in that, I don't even know if it's grape juice anymore, but whatever this tastes like, what is in that drink?